Goes up right now, and then we'll get started for today. And just to let you know for what we're working on today, last week I started by getting all the pieces prepped, all our interfacing attached, and all that for the Cool Cube. Now, this in particular is my own original pattern. I came up with this back in 2021, I believe, and we're here now. So the original cube that I made, I can actually show you, this is the very first cube I made all the way through. This is the one that was the tester. So there are some still little issues in this one. But I actually came up with this pattern to go with fabric that I had that was Lego Mario. And I just, since everything with Legos is blocks, I just had an image that it needed to be a question block. So that was the second one that I made the pattern for. So that is where the Cool Cube came from. I also have made the add-on, which has the medium and small sizes. The regular size is a 8.5-inch cube. The medium is a 6.5-inch cube, and small is a 4.5-inch cube. This is a medium size, and as you can see, it can be sewn in clear vinyl. This is a small cube. This is a done in vinyl with waterproof canvas. If you can see, they actually do fit inside each other if you have it centered. Thank you, Melody. And that's why if you go to my Facebook group or should I say my Facebook group, Turtle Designs, you will see where I have made a stackable set of present boxes for Christmas. And if you hear a dog, my doggy is telling me he sees something outside. So, but we're going to get started. So today we are going to, yeah, or should I say, let's go over what we did last week. Last week, I took the front and two side panels and made them into what I call the front zipper panel. I have a Cocker Spaniel. But what we did is that we sewed them together and then we opened the seam and top stitched them. And then what I did is I basted, and as you can see the seam where I basted it. And this is Insulbrite. Now, I don't know that this is going to be used for a lunchbox or anything, but I find that sometimes foam is too thick, especially when you're using vinyl for the exterior. So I use Insulbrite, which has the possibility of being able to be insulated as well as gives it good structure. So this is the front, what I call the front zipper panel. Then we also attach the Insulbrite and waterproof canvas in this case for the top and bottom of the bag, and then we rounded the corners. And we also, if you see, you'll see where I marked the centers of every single side for both of these. This is your top and bottom. Also, for the back panel, added the Insulbrite, and then we have our waterproof canvas. And it's not together, and we will go over why today. We are going to finish the main body of the cube, and we'll see where we are on time wise, whether we. But so first things first, we're going to go and attach our zipper. Now, my zipper, just to show you, is basically about half an inch longer on each side than the front panel. So it's an inch longer than the actual panel. You can get the measurements of what you need to cut from Hi Alpha, um, my pattern, which you can actually go and buy from sewingturtleboutique.net. And there's the Cool Cube as well as the Cool Cube add-on if you want the two smaller sizes. But as you see, I've got my zipper tape and two zipper pulls. Now I've already got my zipper pulls on here, but I'm actually getting ready to take them off. I just had them on the zipper tape so I didn't lose them in the meantime. So I'm actually going to take this off and set them to the side because that reduces the bulk um, when I'm sewing the lining and the exterior of the front zipper panel. So what we're going to do now, so I have my front zipper panel and I have my lining of my front zipper panel. And that's what we're going to use. And like I said, there's about a 1/2 inch extra. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take and have about 1/2 inch extra here. And we're going to baste it down to our lining. Wrong side to your lining is right side up and your zipper is right side up. Oh, we won't even show how many different vinyls and notions I have and how many just came in the other day. I just had like 4 different colors of dragon scale vinyl come in. I think a pink, a red, a green, and black, which I used for toothless keychains. As you can see, it's kind of holographic. And then I have the Light Fury. So, so we're going to, if you see, I've got about a 1/2 inch overlapped. But what we're going to do is we're going to lay it down on the machine and we are going to baste it at 1/8 of an inch. And I will go ahead and turn the camera to the sewing machine. Right. Right. So if you see, I've got my overlap here. You can see that it's not equal with nothing. You could make it equal, but this gives you a little bit of extra to play with. So, as I've said before, when I sew, if I'm not planning on the basting stitches to come out, I will actually do a back stitch just so it's more secure. And since this will be buried on the inside, you don't know that I've actually done back stitches. So I'm going to do a 1/8 of an inch. And you can clip this, can it? Since I'm using vinyl and waterproof canvas, I would use clips. If you are using woven, you could definitely use pins. I've used pins before. On that dragon bag, it is completely cotton, both inside and out. So then you can use pin to hold it in place. And especially cotton, sometimes the fabric will stretch, so it's better to pin it in place. But waterproof canvas and vinyl, very, especially on vinyl that it's already been interfaced, do not stretch. So, like I said, we just go, and you can go as fast or slow as you want when you're basting. I just do it to make sure and line up my edges, just to make sure everything's straight so that you don't have a wavy zipper. And so you could pin all 3 layers of this and the exterior and the lining and the zipper tape together out one time. But I find it's less likely to shift if I do this in the meantime. So just to show you, this is one side and here's my other side. So about one side's a little longer, but that's going to be buried in your seam. So you're never even going to see that. I just have a little bit extra, so because a lot of times when you sew zippers, they will seem to scrunch up, and then you're short. So I don't cut mine exact. I always have a little bit of extra, even when I make somebody else's patterns. If it says cut 29 inches, I'll cut 30 just to make sure I'm on the extra and not too little. So now that we have that basted, so if you can see my stitching on there right here. What I'm going to do, so this is right sides together of the lining, right sides to get right sides up for the lining and right sides up for the zipper tape. So now what we're going to do is we are going to take our exterior. Now this is where I will actually take some clips in place, mainly because I don't want it to shift while I'm starting this. So I will actually clip right below where I'm going to start and right below the zipper tape. And then I will come down here to the end and do the same. And a lot of times I will actually clip this all the way because this is when you get things that get stretched and things become out of alignment. So I go to one end to the other and I will clip. You don't have to clip a bunch of them. I have a little clip bowl next to me. So just if you see, there's my little clip bowl. Cute little dragon. We'll clip this all the way down, just a little bit at a time. And so this is just to keep it in place so it doesn't shift. So it doesn't have to be tons of clips, just enough to keep it from stretching, which even though it's vinyl, it can sometimes. Another thing you can do is that you can use double stick tape instead, but to me that's more trouble than it's worth. So there's our clips. So just so you can see, I've clipped, like I said, below, and that's just to hold it in place. I'll have to remember where I got the bowl. She also has cats and turtles and everything else, but I really loved the dragon bowl. That was my favorite. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually sew this together at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. But yeah, I'll have to go look where I found that bowl. But she has all kinds. Her son makes them, um, and he does all different shapes and colors. So, but we're going to sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'll just pull clips out as I get to them. And one thing, since this is a narrow foot, it has an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance width between the needle and the edge of the foot. I can just follow along my previous stitching, and it's perfectly straight. Well, this is actually, it's a mood shifting, goes from blue to purple. So my favorite color. Okay. We are going to finish sewing this all the way down. This is your longest seam of the entire. I said our goal for tonight is just to finish mainly the body of the bag. And then next week we will attach the top and bind it, as well as adding the handle. And then we will attach the bottom and bind that the next week. I'm not trying to rush this for people. Also, it's hard for to stay on a video with signal and everything for more than an hour a lot of times. All right, so if you see, you can see my stitching. There's my stitch, the basting stitch, and there was the 1/4 inch seam allowance that I just did. So now what we're going to do we're actually going to, now, if you had woven fabric at this point, you could take it to your ironing machine, your iron, and press open the seam allowance. However, since this, like I said, waterproof canvas and vinyl, that's not really an option. So I will go and clip up the side on the side, and I will do what's called a finger press, opening up the seam. So you see on the back. An ironing machine would be kind of cool. I do have a press, and so that works too, but not once you have the zipper because that'll melt the zipper. So an ironing machine would be nice if it did it for me. But see, we are going to finger press that all the way down. But what I'm actually going to do first is go ahead and clip it all the way around the bottom, and I'll explain why. Because this is, once we finish top stitching this is going to be considered one piece. And you will have, just like your top and bottom, will have your Insel Bright in between your exterior and your waterproof canvas, giving you a fully insulated front of your bag. Don't we all like to have a machine that did our ironing for us? Even though sometimes I do have my teenager do it for me. That helps sometimes, but she gets paid for it. It's been a week. So we're going to finish clipping all the way around. Just because you want these uniform with each other. And that's the biggest thing, is that you need these uniform. So everything lays flat. Of course, I need more clips. Okay. So if you can see, I have it clipped. And I have it clipped on the back. Now I'm going to finger press everything, just so it kind of lays flat. And I'll do it on the front and back side so that my lining lays flat as well. So you see it all kind of laid flat a little better. So I'm going to do that with my lining as well, 'cause it gets pretty thick on the seam. And I'll actually, while I'm stitching this, I will pull it down taut as well. All right. So what I'm going to do, we are going to start over here. When you're looking at it on the left side, we are going to top stitch it at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, right underneath the zipper. Like I said, this is when my narrow foot is a godsend, because doing an 1/8 inch top stitch, I just put it at the edge of my fabric and follow along. So as I said, I will press it down as I go, so this goes a little slower. Now, if you're using vinyl, I do suggest having about a 3 inch or a number 3 on your stitch width, just to give you, so you don't perforate your vinyl. Say it. So as you see, and I'm getting ready to go over a thick part where we have the first seam. Now, if anybody ever asks me, my favorite size cube is actually the medium cube. And that you can get as part of the cube add-on on my website as well. The add-on is only $2. It is put together exactly like the regular size cube. However, it is only the measurements for the pieces that you need to cut for the medium and small cubes. But the exact instructions are exactly the same of how you put it together. I will say, of all of them, the smallest one is the most difficult to put together, even though it's smaller, because you are working in those small spaces. Now, just to show you, I just got to the end, and instead of going off and back stitching, I'm actually going to leave my needle in, lift up my presser foot, and pivot. And this is why I have clipped it all the way around, because what we are going to do, we are going to baste it together um, at an eighth of an inch seam allowance, and that will keep the two layers together and sandwiched. Medium's my favorite because it's not as bulky as the large one. It fits in my machine very well and uses minimal materials. So it's just become my favorite over time, especially for clear cubes. So like I said, we're going to baste this together at the same seam allowance what we were doing our top stitch. And we're just going to go all the way around and back up to where we started our top stitch. And I do this in my pattern, and I show it as we go. So yet again, I left my needle in and just pivoted my fabric, and we're going across the bottom. And just to show you, it's all nicely connected and flush with each other. This is why I made such a big deal of actually clipping when you will see me not use clips a lot of times. No, not necessarily for any purposes. It's just it's the easiest to sew. Now, if you notice, I did not have my zipper pulls on yet again. And the reason being, when you're sewing, you can have them on. If you feel better, you can have them on. But just from my own experience, if you wait until after the step to put your zipper pulls, then you have less trouble sewing the pieces together. Because then you have to lift up your presser foot with the needle still in, move your zipper pull out of the way, and it makes it a little more difficult. I'm not saying it's not doable, but do what's most comfortable for you. And this is what I find is easiest. And that's why I share you with what I'm doing. We are going through this. I'm going to do one last pivot to go up that last side where we started our top stitch at the zipper. Now, as far as size wise, I find the large to be the best size. But for the convenience of making it, the medium is better for me. And don't forget to back stitch here. So you lock in your stitches. Okay. Just to show you, and I will turn the camera around so you can see me and see it in a little bit bigger frame. So we have our front panel. You see there's a little bit of zipper tape. This also makes it easier to put those zipper pulls back on. So we go all the way around, and you see the little bit here. Since you have two zipper pulls, Yet again, the reason. And then on the back side, we see our nice straight top stitch. And then at the bottom, you can see my basting stitch. And since I sewed it with a basting stitch of an eighth of an inch, it will be hidden because the seam allowance is a quarter of an inch. So you're not going to see it. All right. So now at this point, make sure you don't forget your zipper pulls. Let me tell you, even though I've said that, I have forgotten. So I always make sure that they are where I can see them while I'm sewing this part. So when I'm cutting all my pieces, I put the zipper pulls on the zipper tape until I need them so I don't lose them. And then I pull them off and put them right back on again. And the best thing for zipper tape is to make sure if you look, yes, I know I do it by hand, but it's to make sure where you've cut is even when you put it back together. And you can see inside the back of the, like this part, where it's coming together, if it's straight or not. Okay, so we're going to do the other side. So I will feed my zipper onto the zipper tape. Of course, it wants to be difficult. So it is a little harder to get the zipper pulls because you have bulky fabric that is wanting to fight you. So if you're more comfortable with having it on ahead of time, so just to show you, you see how it's just sticking out right there? You can actually look and like I can pull it back a little bit and you can see it and you'll be able to see if it's even or not. And you can just do that and then you can just pull it down. And there we go. I know a lot of people use a jig. I have one. I've used the fork method, and doing it by hand is a lot easier for me. But I know other people don't have that ease at it. So it just takes practice. I can tell you how many I messed up zipper tapes before I got the hang of it. Right, so now we have our completed front zipper panel with zippers, as you can see. My daughter picked the Tangled Sun and the Encanto candle to go with all her Disney characters. So, what we need now is the back panel and the back panel lining. This is our exterior and our lining. If it is directional, this is a non-directional print, so I just need to make sure which side I want towards the top. But this is a non-directional print. As you can see, Merida's right side up, Rapunzel's sideways, and all different characters are upside down. Lotso's upside down. So it just depends on which way I want it right side up. So my daughter's favorite is Rapunzel, so we're going to make sure that Rapunzel and Cinderella are right side up. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this, and I usually start on the right hand side. And what we're going to do is we're going to take right sides together. We're going to sandwich our zipper panel piece in between. And I usually attach one at a time, but I don't sew them separately. So I'm going to clip it in place. And you do not match from the top because you're going to have an extra bit. So if you can see, you have an extra amount above your zipper tape. We are going to trim that off once we are done with the next step. So we are going to line it up at the bottom. So if you see the bottom actually match up, we're going to clip it in place. And I'm going to do that all the way up. Okay. And then I'm going to take my lining and I'm going to line it up yet again at the bottom and clip it. Like I said, make sure you start lining up from the bottom, not the top. I know a lot of people have a tendency to start from the top. you need to make sure you start from the bottom. All right. So we have our sandwiched. Hi, Beth. And so if you want to see from the inside, there is our sandwiched zipper panel that's in the middle. And then this is our exterior and our lining. And this is the back part. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this to the machine and sew it together at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we are going to sew all the way from the top down to the bottom. I know that I told you that we're going to end up trimming some of this off. That doesn't matter at this point. We need to sew it so we can get accurate seams. So I'm going to switch you back over to my sewing machine. Okay, so we have our first one. And like I said, I sew at a 1/4 inch. For this entire pattern, I sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And unless it's different, any of my patterns, mainly being the exception of the Gamer's Night Out, are all sewn at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And if any of you have the Cool Cube pattern, you can make several medium cubes and small cubes together, and they will fit in the turtle tote perfectly. Don't ask me. That was an unexpected, and my thread is shredding, so I'm actually going to do this real quick and just pull out. Occasionally, you get a bad part of your thread. Probably means I need to change out my needle, which I will do later. Y'all get to see me try to thread a needle. There we go. All right. So we are going to back up a little bit just so I can make sure that my seam is good. And I said this is at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. See that again? Don't forget to back stitch through each step. Just to show you, there is my basting from when I basted the Insel Bright. And then there's my stitch, which is 1/8 of an inch inside of those basting stitches, which is why I said all my basting stitches are going to be hidden. They're right here, and then there's my seam. So the next step, we are going to take our two pieces and we're going to make them wrong sides together. We're going to basically open up the seam, kind of like how we did the zipper panel. And I am going to make sure that they are clipped together at the end. We are not closing this up. I'm just doing it so I can have it at the right place. So I just clip a couple clips, not tons, enough just to get started. And like I said, when you have vinyl, the best thing to do is finger press your seams open. And I'm going to turn it the other way around. Okay. So now what we're going to do, starting from the top, and I say this because that's just, it's the ease of it because you've got the shorter side right here. The next one to top stitch, the next side will be a little more difficult, but we'll talk about that as we get there. Okay, so what we are going to do, set it there so we have that 1/8 of an inch top stitch right at the seam. And this is going to make it lay flat so we have no issues. This is just to secure the seam. Make sure you back stitch at this point. Make sure I didn't have skip stitches there. Sometimes you do and you don't. Sometimes you don't think you do and you do. So, okay. Okay, I have bent my needle, which I said I thought I had a bad needle. So, you're going to have to see me change out a needle. I apologize for that. Now I have people who go, oh no, you're having to backstitch on vinyl, or you have to take out stitches on vinyl. The biggest thing, if you have to take out stitches on vinyl, don't worry about it. Just take them out. And as long as you go through the same holes, you're good. Okay. So we are going to change out what the joys of having a thread, or not thread, a needle bend on you, just as you do this. And if anybody's curious as to what I use for regular needles, I use just 90 by 14 needles by Oregon. That's usually what I use when I'm sewing vinyl. Occasionally, if I'm doing very dense layers, I will go to 100 by 16 and use a heavy duty needle. But most of the time, I do not. And that would be why this needle bent. This is an 80 by 10 because I was making my daughter's Easter dresses last week and forgot to change back out to a 90 by 14. So that would be why we bent. Not meant to go through those layers. So that's my own fault. So see, doesn't matter how experienced you are, you can still make rookie mistakes. So don't let that dissuade you in your sewing if you make mistakes. Everybody does, whether they want to tell you they do or not. Gotta cut threads a little too frayed. Sorry, you'll have to watch me thread a needle. And I know some of you are gonna be like, "Oh, there's a needle threader on that machine." Yeah, me and that don't get along. So I just thread it by hand. Because I know somebody's gonna be like, "Oh, but you have a needle threader on your machine." We don't get along. So let's put it that way. So like I said, the biggest thing when you're doing vinyl, if you have a vinyl top stitch, which of course this did this during a top stitch because I'm going through the thickest seam, is just to make sure you go in through the same holes. So it's not a big deal. Yeah, that's going through a lot better. Make sure you backstitch. And I just take my time. Yeah, if you're sewing and say you don't use a seam ripper, you're lying. Okay. Trim our threads just to show. There's our seam. We're going to trim our threads off the back as well. All right. So what's left is to attach the other side. Okay. So now what we are going to do now, this is where it gets a little more difficult. We are going to match up. Apparently I forgot to trim those threads. The other side. Now on the exterior side, it's very easy. We're going to go ahead and this is why I said it's good practice to clip your exteriors together first. You're clipping right sides together. And I'm now using more clips than I did on the previous side, mainly because this side is going to get kind of a workout. So I'm going to actually show you. So if you see, here is our lining. Well, we need to match it up to that side too. So the best way to do this, so you see I've got the clips with the right exteriors together. We're going to take our fold. So anything that's going to show creases, that's not necessarily the best material for this. Okay. It's what's called the burrito method. So you see, I'm kind of rolling it like a burrito. And then here's the right side right here of my lining. And I am going to clip it in place, matched up at the bottom, just like the previous side. And I will show you what it looks like when it's clipped. And then when it's sewn. All right. So just so you can see, this is what it looks like all together. And this is what our seam looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and take this at a 1/4 inch seam. And so take your time, no rush. And like I said, I use a few more clips on this one, mainly so things don't shift while having this big burrito roll underneath my arm. We're going through. So just take your time. I think some people just don't use a needle threader when it comes to because they feel more comfortable doing it by hand. All right, so we have sewn our seam yet again at this point. Now, just I didn't say this in the previous step, but at this point, you can trim off the excess zipper tape. I usually don't, but you can trim this off if you want it to be flush because it's going to be hidden in your seam anyways. It's not going to affect how much is bulk there is at this point or anything like that. So you can trim it or you can leave it. So we have our burrito. So the biggest thing right now, and this is probably why I say the small is the hardest. It's turning this inside out or right side out. So just to show you, I will turn the camera again. So we have our burrito. There's our seam. So the thing I find best to do is just kind of pull it through. So of course, the regular size cube turns pretty easily. But like I said, it will get crinkled. If you have a vinyl or canvas that gets very wrinkledy and you can't press it, then you're going to have issues. So, and that small one, you're turning through a lot smaller. Think if the cube's only 4.5 inches, it's a lot smaller to try to turn through that little hole right here. So right now we have one side top stitched, as you can see, and the other side is not. We're getting ready to fix that. So I'm going to move back over to the machine. And just to show you, I will show you how I put it in my machine to make sure it's sewn. And then we are going to do some basting to base things in place. Okay, let's get you moved back over. Okay, so what I find is easiest is actually to take the body of the bag because it's going to get bulky. And this is also why the smaller one I find is the hardest because it's the hardest to put there. But I put this behind my machine so that I can have free reign to do my top stitch. And I'm going to follow. And like I said, I do my top stitch starting at the top, going to the bottom. And there's a reason I do this, especially on this side, because after we go down, just like how we did the front zipper panel, when we basted all the layers together, we're going to go all the way down and then baste across the bottom to make that flush. So we'll get started. Okay. You heard my presser foot just jump down. Okay. And we'll get started. So I am pulling my seam open as I go down. And another trick when you are doing this is to actually crank, and I'm going over the thickest seam right here, which is basically the top stitch that we did for the zipper panel. And once I get past that, okay, then you hear my machine make unhappy noises with me because it's going over that thick part again. Mm. And we are not catching it. So apparently my bobbin ran out. Of course it did. After everything else, the bobbin ran out, which happens. So we are going to check my bobbin. So you were just stitching, which is always lovely. And yet again, like I said, when you are stitching vinyl, all that means is that you need to make sure to stitch in the same exact holes, and you're not going to miss the holes. Okay, let's go forward. We have things being difficult again. Something is off. Like I said, this shows that everybody has issues from time to time. Trim out the excess thread. Apparently, it was meant to show that everybody can have screw ups, but we are going to move on and move ahead. It happens. Sometimes you fuss with it, and then the next little bit, it never has issues. So it's never a guarantee one way or the other if everything's going to go perfectly. And of course, when you're trying to do something to show somebody else something, it's not going to. So that's just my train of thought. It says, because I wanted to show y'all, so I'm going to be quick with it, that I think part of it going too fast. If you're thinking I'm going super, super slow, sometimes it's best when your machine wants to be a pain in the rear to go slower. Okay, we just broke the machine completely. I'm not the machine, the needle. Gotta love a bad needle. I think this is a day where everything that can go wrong does go wrong, which shows everybody can have one of those days. So we will clip our threads. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and switch needles again. All that lovely stuff. Gotta love when your things want to fight you. So we will change out threads. So sometimes the best laid plans just don't go according to plan. Woo! And I'm throwing screwdrivers at myself now, apparently. So we're going to get one more of this, and we are going to keep going, hopefully with less issues. So just to show you, not everybody is foolproof. And since I am doing this live, I don't edit out anything. So I'm very transparent for everybody. Oh, all right, so we're gonna go one last time. Hopefully we have less issues. Okay. As you see, apparently I just had a bad needle. That brand new needle just had a bad needle, which does happen from time to time. So as I said, as we get down to the bottom, we are going to pivot just like we did the other, and we are going to do a basting stitch all the way across. And you're going to make sure your lining, and in this case waterproof canvas, and exterior, and in this case vinyl, match up. As you can see, now we're stitching without any issues whatsoever. It just wanted to test my patience today, going down that one side. So just to show you, that bottom is basted together, and we've got that basted seam. I mean, that basted top stitch seam. Now, you're like, oh, well, what about the top? Well, what we're going to do is I'm actually, so if you see, there is an excess of about a quarter of an inch, depending on your zipper tape. It could be as much as a half an inch, which is very unusual, but usually between a quarter and an eighth of an inch at the top. And I'll show you how much I trim off. But I'm going to go over to my cutting board, and I'm going to lay my cutting ruler from one zipper side of the zipper to the other and cut a straight line. And I will show you that as soon as I get back, which will take me about 2 seconds. But what we're going to do is we are basically trimming off the excess. But like I said, it can differ because of some, not all number five zipper tapes are created equal. Sometimes you end up with a 4.5 inch, um, 4.5 instead of a 5, and then you have less or you have more. Sometimes you end up with a 5.5. This just really is my day. My rotary cutter's trying to be a pain in the rear. All right. So just to show you, I have trimmed it and it is flush now with the zipper. If you can see it's flush, this is the amount I trimmed off. And you see I have both the lining and the exterior. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to baste at 1/8 of an inch, all three of those layers together, because I did just take off the basting stitch of my Insulbright. So we are going to baste through all three layers, right at that seam to the other side of that seam. So you are closing up the stitching up there, so you really don't need to worry about the fact, oh, I just cut off my back stitch of my top stitch. No, you're closing up that seam, so it's not going to separate while we're doing the next part. And you said that stitched with no issues. I think I just had a bad needle. So we trim our threads. Thanks, Melody. All right. So that's where I'm going to stop for tonight, especially after our little hoopla. So I have basted that together at the top, as you can see. And there's my basting down at the bottom. And there are my top stitches that went through the seam. Do have a few threads to trim, as you can see, random little threads. But so what we will do, you will leave it wrong side out for the time being. What you need to make sure to do is to mark your centers. And the way to mark your centers, we match up our seams right here at the zipper tape. As you see, they're not matched up right there. And we will mark our center. And I'll do that on top and bottom because you have a top and bottom. One reason y'all get lives versus the other. I haven't figured out how to do the editing software yet, so that's why. So then we hold that just like we were. And if actually, if you look, your seams that attach your sides to your front will match up, which tells you, oh, I've got this perfectly centered. And we're going to mark it right beside that on both top and bottom as well. Now, this is a little different because it is the zipper tape, but you still need to mark your center. This is very important because the next step is going to involve the top, which is where your zipper is. So you need to make sure you can see your zipper. So as you can see, I use a Sharpie because it's not going to go anywhere. If it's a dark fabric, a lot of times I'll use a silver marking pen, which is what you use a lot of vinyls. So to do the last center marking, I will match up my center markings that I used previously. So if you see right there, I will line them up and follow along to the side and do my markings. And that will get on both sides, on both top and bottom. You need to make sure you do both top and bottom because, like, oh, I can just do the top. Well, it's kind of hard to mark your centers once you've already got your top attached. So you need to make sure you do it on top and bottom. So, all right, so I will line up those and your seams yet again at the bottom. If you look, your seams match up perfectly. You know you've got it perfectly centered. Okay, and mark that. All right, so we have everything marked. We will leave it wrong side out. Actually, I'm probably going to leave it folded up. I usually fold it while I'm not working on it. Lot less bulk to deal with. So now all we have left is our main body, our top and bottom, and your handle. Now, in my case, I'm using webbing. So now, one thing that you can go ahead and do if you are using webbing or if you've already made your handle, I'm not making the handle this time, but you can. You can make it both out of vinyl and woven. I have instructions for both in the instructions. But if you see, it's hard to see because it's such a colorful thing. But right here is a marking 1 inch from the edge. We will use that to attach to the top once the top is actually attached to the bag. And that'll be for next week. So I will see y'all next week and good luck.